Hello everyone, I'm Anthony on Life, and welcome back to the On Life, where we seek to bring clarity to a confusing world. In this video, we are going to be talking about reading physical books on paper versus listening to audiobooks, which one I think is better and why, also which one I think you should be doing. And when I was doing the research for this video, I was looking up specific keywords for reading versus audiobooks. And when you're making YouTube videos or any kind of content for the internet, you want to research keywords and key phrases and questions that people are searching for. That makes your content discoverable. If I'm discussing topics that no one's looking for, no one is going to find that video and watch it, so it's not really going to help anyone. So while I was doing the keyword research for audiobooks versus reading, a common phrase or question kept popping up. There are a lot of people searching for the answer to the question, are audiobooks cheating? And I thought this was a little strange, but that is a question I'm going to answer in today's video. One of the best things about audiobooks is that you can listen to them and absorb and digest the content while you are doing other activities. It's very common for people to listen to audiobooks while they're driving to work or doing mundane chores around the house, like doing laundry, mowing the lawn. You can always just put an audiobook on your headphones or in the background while you're doing work at your job, if you have a desk job. So this makes audiobooks extremely convenient. That is the beauty of audiobooks, is that you can multitask while you are listening to that audiobook. I don't know of anybody who just sits down on the couch, puts an audiobook on, and closes their eyes and simply listens. There's probably some people out there who do that, but I have never met anyone that does that. In that way, audiobooks are very similar to music. A lot of music serves as, unfortunately, background noise for our lives. And I highly doubt that the artists that created that music intended it for it to be absorbed that way. In fact, back in the day before televisions were really a thing and most people only had a radio or record player, it wasn't uncommon for people to get together and listen to a new album that just came out on vinyl or have a listening party to a radio show. And we don't really do that with audio content anymore. It's almost always being played while we are doing something else. And that is what makes audiobooks so convenient and a great way for busy people to still learn new things or be entertained by a particular story. And that is the strength of the audiobook. But that convenience is also the drawback of an audiobook. You are almost always consuming it while you are somewhat distracted by another task or activity. And that is the strength of a physical book, whether you're reading it on paper or it's on an e-reader. When you are engaged in the act of reading, you are 100% focused on that task. You're not reading and folding laundry. You're not reading and driving to work, at least hopefully you're not. And that focus lends itself to a couple of distinct benefits. Number one, you're probably going to digest and absorb the material much better than you would if you're distracted by another task. I used to have a long commute and I would put on audiobooks or sometimes podcasts, and a lot of times there'd be a situation where I'd really have to pay attention to what I was doing in the car, coming through a busy intersection, or someone would cut me off and I'd have to react, and my mind would 100% completely ignore what I was listening to. And then it became difficult to scroll back to where I was before so I could re-listen, especially because now I'm still driving and I need to concentrate on that and I can't really look at the buttons I'm pushing. Obviously, when you are reading a book, a physical book, reading words on paper or even on a screen, you don't have those distractions. That's also why I do kind of like reading actual physical books rather than e-readers, because a lot of e-readers now are people's phones or tablets and they're getting notifications and you're constantly being interrupted. That's a discussion for another day. But you have much more focus when you're reading a physical book. However, it's not just absorbing the content in the book that really is the strength of reading a physical copy of a book. In my opinion, one of the best parts of reading an actual book is because my focus is so singular, it actually allows my mind to wander a little bit and be more creative, be more thoughtful, have a more daydreaming experience where I can consider different perspectives more in depth and really start to create this muse, if you will, where I feel inspired to take action or to create something new or have a greater sense of empathy for someone that I didn't fully understand before. And the pacing of reading an actual book allows you to stop, kind of drift off into those thoughts, and then just pick right back up where you were before. Where if you were listening to an audiobook, of course, you could always just hit that pause button and then daydream. But I find that process is a little bit more clunky when you're listening. And again, if you were to daydream and drift off into these beautiful, wonderful mind experiences, then you're going to have to go back and try to find where you left off, and you're again going to miss a lot of things. So I think that singular focus is really the strength of a physical book. And if you think about how most people live their lives today, with so many people working a lot with their main job and side hustles, and people with many social media accounts and regularly posting to those and regularly looking at social media while they're going to the bathroom or cooking dinner or eating dinner or whatever it is, there's so few activities that we do now that are very singular in nature, where we sit in a quiet place and just focus on one thing. The other thing you want to consider about reading is that it is really an exercise in the human imagination. Have you ever read a book and then it gets turned into a movie, and the movie doesn't really live up to your expectations, and in part because the characters don't really look as you imagine that they would, or the world itself that the author created with the words doesn't really look like the director's interpretation of that world doesn't really match your expectations? The same thing can happen with audiobooks. Even though it's just a voice actor's voice that you're listening to, that can greatly change how you feel about the story or the information, and it does take out a big chunk of your imagination's work. It's taking some of that load off of your imagination, and I think you're losing something there. I think there's something to be said about the brain having to work to manifest this world that you're extracting from the paper. And when you have a particular voice, the way it sounds, the inflection of the words, the pacing at which the narrator narrates, I think that can really take a big part of that job away from your imagination. And while it doesn't necessarily ruin the book or make it less valuable, I do think that you are missing out on one of the benefits of actual reading. So does that mean I think that reading is better than listening to audiobooks? For me personally, yes, I do think that reading is better. However, if you don't have time to sit down and read a book, I do think audiobooks are a great option. And that brings us to the burning question that apparently a lot of people on the internet are asking, which is, are audiobooks cheating? I think this question is very interesting and entertaining because, well, in a way it's also sad. There is nothing to cheat, because books and reading are for gaining knowledge, seeing the world through new perspectives, new lenses, or just entertaining yourself. The question seems to indicate that people think of reading as these trophies, as clout chasing, that, oh, I read X amount of books, I'm so smart. A lot of the best books I've ever read weren't necessarily the best because there was some secret knowledge hidden within them, and once I had that knowledge, then I had a leg up on everyone else. Really, the best books I've ever read were the ones that inspired me or were a catalyst for me to try something new, or just spontaneously created new ideas in my mind. Even sometimes those ideas weren't directly related to the content within the book. That is the power of books. That is the beauty of books. And you can get that from reading or from audiobooks. And in fact, I actually use both. I do really prefer reading physical books, but I have a limited amount of time to do that. So I take titles that I'm somewhat interested in but don't want to dedicate my very scarce reading time to, and I use those on audiobook because it's a way for me to check the book out, see if I'm into it, but I don't have to give up a lot of my really scarce reading time to see what that book is all about and learn something new. If I'm not super into a book, that's when I'll do it on audiobook because I'm not worried about if I miss little tidbits here or there, or if I'm not really digesting the whole thing fully. So no, audiobooks are not cheating. If you enjoy them, if you're getting something out of them, if they're entertaining to you, that is the most important thing, and I encourage you to continue to use audiobooks. Would I only do audiobooks? Me personally, no, and I would probably encourage other people not to only consume audiobooks, but to read other books as well. But for some people, that's simply not an option. Okay, so lastly, we are going to cover what I promised in the beginning, which is my favorite audiobook. And this is a little bit hypocritical of me because my favorite audiobook is World War Z. And the reason why it's one of my favorite audiobooks is because each chapter is read by a different voice actor. And I know earlier I said that the voice actor can change how you interpret a story. However, World War Z's story fits perfectly with this type of narration because the book itself is actually a zombie apocalypse book, but it's taking place after the apocalypse has ended, and it's a series of stories told by individuals basically telling their version of what happened. And so having a different narrator for each chapter makes these characters really come to life. I think there'd be something lost if every single chapter was read by the same narrator. You would still get the idea, but having the different voices come in each chapter really makes them each stand out and stand on their own as smaller individual stories. And there's some fairly iconic voices in the audiobook that you might not recognize who they are right away, but some of the voices have a familiarity to them, which really lends itself to the story. So what do you think? Do you like audiobooks better or do you like reading better? Let me know. Tell me what your favorite book or audiobook is. I actually would like to start listening to more audiobooks, so if you have any good recommendations, please let me know. And you will see me in the next video.